Nintendo, man, my thumbs were always sore. We stayed up past midnight, beating every score. Now I'm almost 21, playing evermore.
Okay, it is extra content this time of less time of the year, whatever. It's Beaveman and the daughter. So welcome, Beavemanites, Docutrons, and I don't know, daughter bots. I don't know if you're a fan of the daughter. I'm a fan of the daughter. Yeah, okay, yeah, you should be. So we're doing some extra content because I'm traveling this week, and I came home for a hockey game, Red Wings, and of course, obviously, first and foremost, to see the family because I'm out in Arizona where they're currently having their polar vortex. And let me just say, people of northern Arizona, if you're listening to this, one would think that you know how to drive in the snow because it does snow there, but apparently you do not know how to drive in the snow. So maybe you should come to Michigan and learn how to drive because a quarter-inch of snow in the mountains does not necessitate driving 15 miles per hour. If you think about it, that's actually more dangerous than driving at a relatively, faster speed, especially when you've got rigs that are behind you and they're coming down and barreling on you and you're going 15 miles per hour. It's just something to think about, and I'm doing my best to see because this is Beaveman and the daughter, and I am not swearing at you. Anyway, how is it going, daughter?
Oh, it's okay.
Could you elaborate?
I'm okay.
All right. So you had a pretty successful basketball game recently.
Yeah, except we lost, so I guess it's not that successful, but...
Hey, losing is part of playing, obviously. I've spent my entire life losing. Yeah. The games I've played. Anyway, what are we going to talk about this week?
Wasn't it global warming versus climate change?
Is it a versus?
I don't know.
I think of climate change as a symptom of the disease that is global warming. You spend a lot of time learning about that sort of thing in school, don't you?
Yeah, we did it for a unit in science.
And what did you learn?
Well, climate change is like over a period of at least like 20 years-ish, and like the change in weather. Well, not weather, but like...
Well,
yeah.
because you told me there's a difference between weather and climate, and a lot of people use those terms interchangeably. So tell us about those terms then.
Weather is, it could change any minute, and then climate is how the weather changes over a long period of time.
Okay, so I was telling someone the other day who's a student, I said, hey, this is the smartest you're ever going to be. So I was asking the students some questions, not as in me drilling them, but asking them if they had the answers, because I can remember me personally as a student for my bachelor's, master's, doctorate. Actually, that's probably the most well-informed that I've been, but I am very comfortable with my own ignorance. I believe that makes me stronger. So that's a good definition. What is your own personal opinion on global warming? As the generation coming along, this is the planet that you're inheriting from your parents. What is your opinion on global warming?
What do you mean by opinion?
What do you think about it? What in the future? How do you think? How do you feel about it now? And where do you see things going? Are you worried?
Well, if the Earth keeps getting, it says 1%, I think, warmer every year, right?
Well, since for the past, I think it's for over the trend of 30 years now, the temperature has raised by 1 degree.
Yeah.
30 to 50 years.
So if it keeps doing that over like a long period of time, my theory is the Earth will blow up.
Because your theory is the Earth is gonna. Oh, that's your theory. Your theory is the Earth. So okay, all right. For one thing, I guess you do concur that the Earth is warming.
Yes.
Okay, so at least you are ahead of our current president, who thinks that it's not true because it's cold outside.
Okay.
Yeah, if you think that global warming doesn't exist because it's cold outside, I understand this is Beaveman and the daughter, and I'm not going to swear and tell you just how completely stupid you are. But that doesn't have anything to do with anything, because as the trend goes, that doesn't mean that global warming is going to warm a certain area up and you're going to be warmer. It depends on what area of the Earth you happen to be in at the time. And if you've talked to anybody who grew up in the North or the Midwest, and they tell you that it's not warmer, they'd probably be lying to you, or they have very bad memories, because I'm not exaggerating when I say that when I was a kid, Summer's age, I mean my daughter's age, you know what I mean. When I was her age, we didn't close school for snow. We had to, I'm not talking about where I had to walk up a mile forward and back to school, but we really did have waist deep snow, and that was a normal thing, and it's not anything that anybody's stressed out about. But now we have very little snowfall, so I can see that trend of change. If you think that the global warming doesn't exist because you're still cold, you clearly don't understand, because we're talking about 1 degree of warmth. And 1 degree of warmth shifts the water levels. It shifts the amount of ice that we have in the Arctic and the Antarctica. So clearly you are ignorant if you're under that belief system. So I guess my biggest concern is just getting your opinion on where you think the Earth is going. I don't think that global warming is going to cause the Earth to explode.
It'd be cool if it did.
Well, at least everything would end for us very quickly, and we wouldn't have to worry about anything anymore. So what have you learned so far in your brief, what we call a journey of discovery on this topic that you and I have been discussing?
I didn't really learn much. I kind of just looked up what's the difference and then made theories on them.
Okay, so what's your theories?
Well, my theory, you already
Other
heard
than the
one
Earth
of them.
exploding.
The other one for global warming is like maybe someday we won't have like snow, we'll have rain or like hot rain, like in a very, very late future.
So you're thinking we're going to have... But even with that, we're talking more... Well, we're already a blue planet because of how much of the Earth is covered. The Earth's surface is covered by water, unless, of course, you believe in the hollow Earth. I guess if we get too much water on the surface, we can always go to the inside where there's more land as opposed to more water. Anyway, so you think that we're gonna have less snow. Maybe your kids won't even see snow.
Yeah.
Depending, if they stayed here in Michigan, they might not see snow because we're getting less and less.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, for example, if the Earth continues to warm and we continue to have climate change, then it is obviously pretty certain that the water level in the ocean will rise. Because if we lose more ice, which is considered, even though we know that there's an ocean there, for example, in the Arctic, we know that's an ocean, the Arctic Ocean, but the ice that's covering like Greenland might be completely go away, and that's going to raise the water level. So we could all be
flooded.
Right. We could all be even more of a blue planet, and if that happens, either, if we're lucky, in my opinion, we all get drowned and die out, or we have to learn how to become, or we got to get gills. You're too young to remember a Kevin Costner movie called Waterworld, where he had gills and he could breathe on land and underwater, which actually would be kind of cool. Or we learn to build floating cities.
Or we could just go to Mars.
Or we could go to Mars and destroy that planet too. I guess that's always an option. So I did actually learn some things about this. I highly recommend the movie Before the Flood, starring Leonardo DiCaprio. That's the movie I told you to watch. Yeah, he's still, even as an older guy now, he's still one of my favorites. I think he's beautiful. I actually like him with a beard and long hair.
No.
Yeah, well, he was making the movie The Revenant, so he did like a 2-year visitations around the world trying to understand global warming and climate change. So I think a lot of the issue that people have with this, obviously, why they think that we have such a problem is because of our use of fossil fuels. Do you know what that means?
Like pollution and stuff? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, our use of fossil fuels, meaning how we fuel our cars, how we heat our homes.
Which creates pollution.
Which creates more of what they call the carbon imprint, which is releasing more carbon into the environment, or releasing more greenhouse gases, which actually heats up the Earth. The Earth is able to cool itself. It releases its own heat. It does cool itself, but it's getting trapped. Have you heard of like TED Talks or?
Yeah, we watched them in like history. And
Okay,
stuff.
so there's a really good TED Talk on that talks about the effect of clouds on, or can understanding cloud science, could that actually help us with this problem of climate change, global warming? So apparently, low-lying clouds, they obviously block a lot of the sun's rays, and that's actually how the Earth is able to kind of keep itself cooler.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one effect of clouds. Unfortunately, the high clouds trap heat in. So as the Earth tries to cool itself by releasing radiation, the high clouds, or I guess you could say the high flying clouds, or high cloud cover, I guess, is actually keeping that heat in. So you've got low clouds that are actually promoting the cooling, but the clouds in the upper elevation are keeping the Earth hot. So the Earth is trying to compensate, but the cloud cover is causing a little bit of difficulty. Yeah, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I kind of get that because, like, if you think about it in a sense of winter and summer, winter the clouds are coming down so that they can release snow or rain, so they're lower. And then in summer, they're higher where you can't really see them. So it's really hot.
And you notice too, as like in wintertime, at least here, we have a lot of cloud cover. So that's kind of why it's more almost why I think it's more miserable in Michigan, because I feel if we had blue skies and sun, but we had lots of snowfall, it wouldn't bother me so much.
Yeah.
But we tend to have a lot of cloudy days. So I think that based on this TED Talk, then, if our cloud scientists were actually able to understand cloud cover, then it sounds like we would actually be able to release some of that radiation. But again, that makes me think that an answer to that question would be learning how to manipulate cloud cover. And I don't know that that's how possible that actually is.
Yeah.
That makes you look at the more science fiction aspect of it and say, well, what are these people going to try to do to control cloud cover? Are they going to release some sort of bomb up into the atmosphere or the stratosphere to disperse the clouds? Clouds are constantly moving, so I don't know how you could control them, but there are people, of course, thankfully, much more intelligent than I am. So that's one little theory. There was another good TED Talk that went over multiple ways. I think it was like 100 ways that we could actually decrease the carbon imprint. And they were, some of them were pretty, I guess, intuitive, and some of them were less intuitive. When we talk about fossil fuels, they went to India in that movie Before the Flood, and a lot of people in India, in order to heat their homes and even to, I guess, to cook with, because they must not have wood as a primary resource. You know what they're using?
No.
They are flattening out cow patties, drying those, and that's what they're cooking with and burning.
Ugh. Like cow patties, like burgers or poop?
Well, no, in India, the cow, in a lot of religious aspects in India, not saying India as lumped as a whole, but cows are revered animals, so most of them are vegetarians, and they don't kill their
Yeah,
cow.
I know that.
So when you talk about a cow patty, it's cow dung. It's a term for cow poop.
Oh.
So they're flattening.
You
out,
could have just said poop.
So they're flattening out the cow poop, making it into like big giant pancake looking things. They dry those, and that's what they burn for fuel.
Come on, I have pancakes in the fridge.
Well, I'm sure they're not poop pancakes that you have.
Well,
in the
maybe you
fridge.
ruined those pancakes.
Well, I mean, eventually they'll become poop pancakes, I guess, if you flatten them out. But so you can kind of look at it in two ways. One, they are utilizing a resource that is already there, right? So in a one sense, they are not being wasteful, which is a good thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I look at it that way. But in the other sense, unfortunately, when you burn that biofuel, if you will, that also releases carbon into the atmosphere. And that contributes to global warming. So how do we combat that type of situation?
Import wood.
Well,
for them.
If we burn wood, all living things are basically carbon based. I'm sure you learned this in science. This is the point in time when you're going to learn more stuff than I'm ever going to even. I've already forgotten all the things that you're learning now. So if you're really paying attention in science and history and all this is why I always say this. Students are more, compared to the average person, students are more intelligent than the rest of us if they're actually paying attention and learning, because I tend to let all that stuff take up less space in my brain anymore. But we're all carbon-based. We're carbon-based life forms. So all life forms are, carbon-based. If it was living, it was carbon-based.
Yeah.
So if you are utilizing that biofuel or that, that carbon-based fuel, then you are contributing to the excess carbon pollutants in the atmosphere. So if you burn poop, you're going to be releasing more of that into the atmosphere. So even though they are taking a resource and utilizing it and not letting it waste, it's contributing to global warming as well. But how can you combat a situation like that when a large nation like our own doesn't even believe in global warming as a whole?
Yeah.
So how can you take an impoverished nation like India and say, well, we can't let you burn that anymore. I know you use it to cook with, and I know you use it to heat your home, but we don't want you using that anymore because that contributes to global warming. Especially as a rich nation like ours that wastes far more fuel, electricity, etc. than probably any other nation in the world. Even in comparison to China now, China's made great strides in decreasing their carbon imprint on the planet. So what's a good recommendation? What do you think is a good recommendation for how to heat homes, how to provide energy to the whole world?
That's a really hard question. I don't know, because I feel like if you burn anything, really, it's going to go into the air for, like, the global warming thing. And you can't really heat anything up without releasing more carbon for it. So I guess it's kind of a hard choice to make, too, with you need to find something that you can do that, like you can release some carbon, but not as much as you would burning something else.
Or, and if we could figure out a way to use what we call renewable energy as opposed to using fossil fuels, then that would be beneficial. And when we talk about renewable energy, what do you think we're talking about?
Like, say, say you put gas in your car, or no, like maybe you put oil in your car for your like oil exchange and stuff like that, and like once all that is, never mind, I don't know what I'm talking about. I was gonna say you could like, if something's like burnt, you could make it and put it with something else to make it not burnt or not like, or like almost good as new and use it again.
You mean if your car was self-sufficient and it reutilized things, so as opposed to having to put more things in. So
yeah.
Like if you started out and you're like your gas or your fuel or whatever was also what you used as your oil and as your coolant, and it gets one area converts it to a different thing as if it's like its own little fusion reactor or its own little recycling plant.
Yeah.
That would be kind of cool. It would still contribute to emissions, but you wouldn't have to produce as much as we produce now. So if instead of me having to fuel up my car every week, I would put it in there once, and the fuel that's in the gas might be converted to the fuel that's our oil for our engine, etc., and all the different fluids can be converted from one thing, so it's a completely self-sufficient running machine. Okay.
Yeah.
Which would be cool. It would still contribute to the carbon imprint, but it wouldn't be nearly as bad as it is now with the amount of emissions I have and with the producing of all the fuel and all the oil, etc. That's a pretty good idea. You gonna come up with that? You gonna figure that one out and actually make that happen?
I could tell scientists to do it even though they wouldn't listen to me unless I give them money.
Right. Well, that is the big thing, is what is more profitable? Is it more profitable here in the United States and other nations to continue to use fossil fuels and to make all the millionaires less millionaires and billionaires anymore, and to develop actual technology that would benefit the planet? Or should we just keep not caring about the planet?
Yeah.
That seems to be the trend. It's also the trend in my opinion, for the rich and the wealthy in these large industries to promote the idea that global warming doesn't exist. That's one of the other things I think. It's also, they like to try to make the persons who are innovative and coming up with new ideas that could actually help, try to make them look crazy. They're very good at trying to make Elon Musk look like he's crazy. But if you watch the movie, if you see the movie Before the Flood, they do actually interview Elon Musk there. And he actually has some really pretty good ideas about how to help the planet. But of course, they're never going to listen to him because they like to label him crazy also. I personally do not care if he's crazy. He seems to have very good ideas. And I guess saying somebody's crazy is a relative description. I'm sure people might say I'm crazy, but I really don't care. So that's a pretty good idea. What about one of the top 100s that they listed also is that our natural forests, rainforests, etc., like that, the more deforestation that we have to produce crops for whatever reason, trees, the forests, etc., work like carbon wicks. So the carbon that we are putting into the atmosphere, the large forests are actually acting as buffers and taking that carbon out of the atmosphere, but we're deforesting. So if we didn't deforest, that would actually help reduce carbon emissions.
Are you saying if we had like a bunch of trees everywhere?
Yeah, instead of a lot of times now if you've ever heard, and this was kind of bigger when I was younger, they always talked about how they're destroying the rainforest.
Yeah.
And it's not just large companies that destroy the rainforest. Obviously, there are countries that are not industrialized nations where they spread into those areas and they plant and they crop and all these, for obviously to feed families. But they're not doing large-scale destruction of the forests. But the forests help reduce the carbon emissions because they actually suck that carbon back up.
Yeah.
So the more forests that we cut down, we're actually contributing to global warming. So if we didn't do that, just by not deforesting and actually utilizing the farmland that we have, we would have we should be able to reduce those carbon emissions. So that's another thing these are all things that seem to be relatively simple, but we don't really concentrate on them. The other thing that I think is a pretty good suggestion, and it doesn't hit me as hard as it used to, but it would probably hit the Americans very hard, is the more livestock we have, the more types of gases that we're putting into the environment that are actually warming the planet. For example, methane. You know what methane is?
Yeah.
So what's methane?
I don't know, but I know what it is.
You don't know, but you know what it is. What is it?
I think we've used it in science.
So you've burned it probably in science. Yeah, and when it burns, it makes an interesting smell.
Like the rotten egg smell? Is that what we're talking about?
That's actually an additive, so that's that sulfur smell.
Yeah.
The smell that they put that in, like natural gas and propane, so that we can...
So that you can smell when it's burning and so that it doesn't kill you.
Yeah, exactly. So you can detect a leak.
Yeah.
So it's actually an additive. So methane is the gas that we produce after we consume and digest and pass our food.
Oh, so farting.
Yeah, so that's methane. So that's the main component of that is methane. So on a small scale, you can imagine that every mammal that passes gas is passing methane into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
So if we were able to reduce the amount of livestock that we produce, that would cut down on the amount of methane produced.
Yeah.
And what is the largest industry, do you think, for livestock in the United States?
Like, are you asking what animal?
Yep.
Cows.
Cows. So basically, cows, all they do is eat shit and eat poop. I don't want to have to edit that out. Eat, poop, and fart. That's all they do.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we've got this huge demand for cattle in this country, we are, again, contributing to global warming.
Well, we just need less vegetarians.
No, we need less vegetarians or we need more vegetarians?
No, less.
Why do we need less vegetarians?
Because if we have less vegetarians, then we can eat more meat. And get rid of the cows.
So you're saying, so for a very short period of time, we should not be vegetarians and we should eat all the cows.
Yeah.
Okay, so, I mean, that's kind of an answer.
Maybe leave like one or two, just to be cute.
Well, maybe, but it's still the same. You have a different way of going about it than I would go about it. My idea and what the good TED Talk that brought this up, of course, is, and it's not a new idea, is that we decrease the demand.
Demand for what?
The demand for cattle.
Why?
Because if we decrease the demand for cattle, we don't have to keep breeding so much cattle. We don't have to produce so much livestock. Because the more livestock we produce, they have to eat, they have to poop, they have to fart.
Yeah, I get that.
So
but
if you
then...
have less livestock, then you're putting less methane into the environment. And the only reason to have less livestock is if the demand goes down. And the only way the demand can go down is if beef is not a major product anymore. So in other words, instead of eating so much meat like we do in this country, everything is about supply and demand. So if you had a product, if you're a cattle rancher, but nobody wants to buy cattle anymore, you don't have to keep breeding cattle. Because you're going to lose money and not make money.
I get that, but in my way that I think about it, if we eat more vegetables, we fart, so then you'll release more methane, and then I think that you should breed not all, but like a lot of cattle, and then freeze that all, eat all that instead of the vegetables, and then it's a win-win because you have no cows and you have no vegetables to make you fart.
Yeah, but you're going to fart
No.
even if you eat protein.
No, you won't.
Yes, you will. You're still going to fart.
No, you won't.
What I'm saying is stop the demand for cattle. If you don't have demand for cattle, then you won't have all the cattle. You won't have so much cattle in the country. The reason why we have such a demand for it is because they keep raising cattle, butchering cattle. But as they're raising it, they're all eating, producing methane. So all this livestock is producing all this methane. But if you didn't have the demand, you could just have a small amount of livestock. We could all still eat beef, but not have this great amount of beef. So example, just doing something as simple as, and they talk about this in the movie too, like we don't eat a lot of beef anymore. We used to eat a fair amount, but we're not like the normal household. I'm sure normal households probably eat beef 2 or 3 times a week. Whether they're eating hamburger, steak, stew meat, whatever. If you have the same amount of chicken per week as you're having, and the farmers were raising chickens, the amount of chickens, even a whole bunch of chickens, do not produce the same amount of methane as one cow does.
Yeah, because they got little baby toots.
Right. So they're not producing as much methane. So if you raised less cattle and more chicken, as an example, we would still get plenty of protein in our diet, but we would reduce the amount of methane in the environment. It's the same thing.
That makes sense.
Yeah, same thing even with us, with humans, right? We produce methane too. That doesn't mean we should go kill off 300 million humans to reduce the methane.
I mean, we could. It wouldn't do anything.
Again, we don't produce as much methane as a cow does.
Yeah.
So if we reduced the demand for beef, we would utilize the beef that we already have, and they would still raise beef, cattle, but not as much as they used to, and that would decrease the amount of methane in the environment.
Okay.
And it's the same worldwide, with just different livestock. All mammals produce this, we produce methane. So we just decrease. This is one thing that we could control. In other words, we're looking at things we could control. We can't control how many wild animals are out there. It's not like there's tons of them, that are producing methane. It's not like we have millions and millions of deer running around Michigan that's producing tons of methane. No, But we do have lots of cattle, and most of the states have lots of cattle producing this much. So you decrease the demand, supply goes down. We decrease the amount of methane.
Yeah.
We decrease the amount of carbon released into the atmosphere, the methane released in the atmosphere, the increase in the warming of the planet. So, but it's easy to, again, these are all things. It's easy to become apathetic when you talk about climate change and global warming. And do you know what apathetic means?
Well, yeah, it's like you can say it, but you can't really like do it. Kind of.
Apathy means
like it's easy to say.
Apathy means I've told you about something, you're aware of something, and maybe you might have the emotional response to it that it bothers you, but it doesn't bother you to the point where you will do something about it. And it might just be because to you it's like, well, what can I do? That's apathy.
Yeah.
It's just saying, well, I know the problem exists, but the problem is so large. In this case, there's nothing I could do.
Yeah.
So, and I think most people who are informed feel that way about climate change, global warming, lots of issues. And even in the movie, Leonardo, he talks about that. Sir DiCaprio, he's not related, but anyway, he talks about that, about how it's such a huge problem, and he feels like what can anybody do about it? What can we do about it? And I think it comes down to these small changes. It's if we decided that we actually wanted to. One, you have to actually believe it. And in this country, I think because we're so rich and because we have it so much easier than the rest of the world, I mean, not every country, but the majority of the countries, we have it easier. We have more resources. We have more frivolous BS than other countries do, that we tend not to care, and we tend to believe stuff that is not accurate. We tend to we believe a president when he says that global warming doesn't exist, as if he's some brilliant scientist when he's not.
Yeah.
The arrogance of someone to tell learned scientists, researchers, that he knows more than they do and global warming doesn't exist. Okay, well, it's okay if he wants to be ignorant like that. Well, it's really not okay because he's the president. But it's not okay for everybody to blindly follow him and believe that because he says global warming doesn't exist, that it doesn't.
Yeah.
When the evidence is all around us, and he's just ignorant. And I'll say it, I voted for him, and I regret that I did, and I hope that he will never be in office again.
I voted for Bernie.
Well, he didn't get
I
to be in the
don't
primary.
care.
He didn't make it out of the primaries. I would have voted for him for president too, but he's going to run, apparently. So he's going to run in the primaries. He announced his candidacy.
Good.
So anyway, so just small changes, and that's one of the things. One of the things that has been disturbing to me with living or visiting or working in Arizona is we have been recycling forever. You know, you've grown up with us recycling.
Yeah.
We've been doing that since Skylar and I have been doing it since we had a home, and actually before that, I think even when we were in an apartment, we recycled. And that's a small thing. Obviously, everything that we put in the recycling bin, even though we try to follow the rules and everything, probably a good percentage of that doesn't get recycled. There's probably a very small percentage that actually gets recycled of the stuff that we recycle. But if everybody recycled and that small percentage was getting done, that would help a little bit. What I found interesting from both the times that I've lived and worked in Arizona is I don't see them recycling.
I think you told me that, yeah.
And that's shocking to me because you would think that they would have a huge push for recycling. You live in
a desert with like barely any trees.
You live in a wasteland in the first place, and it's beautiful in different areas, and I like Arizona quite a bit. But if you think about it, if anybody who's seen Mad Max or The Road Warrior, I kind of think of, and I think they, I don't know if that was Australia or New Zealand where they filmed that. I think it's Australia, but that's what it's like. It's like this big wasteland. So why would you not recycle? That means that everything that everybody produces on a daily basis is just going in a landfill somewhere and adding to this barren wasteland. That I find that very shocking.
Yeah.
And I find it shocking that they're not working on recycling and taking care of that sort of thing in an area that is, works very hard to get its water. So why are you not protecting your resources? I feel like if households recycled, that would help quite a bit also. I feel like if we stopped producing so much plastic, that would help also. But all these things are just monumental, and there's a very small percentage of people that believe in all these things, and so the mass opinion seems to weigh heavier on the common thought processes, at least in our case, of a nation, and that makes us look like we're the outlaws and we're the weirdos when we're the ones trying to do things to help the planet. And so that's why I just wanted your opinion on it, to see what your opinion was, because I worry about what you think about. I want to leave my children the planet better than the way I inherited it from my parents.
Yeah.
And of course, obviously, someday, if you wanted to have children, you want to do the same thing, I would hope.
Yeah.
But I thought that we were actually getting somewhere, because as growing up on a state highway, every day there was garbage littered all over the place on our lawn, because people used to, it was very common for everybody to throw their trash out the window of the cars they were driving.
Mm.
And so that's gone away. And it was also very common a long time ago. The major, like, burger joints, if you will, like Mickey D's, Burger King, those sort of things, they used to, like, they honestly would kind of, like, triple wrap their burgers and then put them in a styrofoam container.
Ugh.
So you had all this stuff, and people just would chuck it out the window.
Hmm.
And styrofoam doesn't really go away.
Yeah.
It takes a couple, like a million years for that to degrade. So I thought we were getting better, but now I feel like we're getting worse. And I think that's why people can become apathetic, because the problem seems so huge, but we have to make small changes. So what do you think? Are you gonna become one of those apathetic persons, or do you think that it's something that can be worked on?
I feel like it's something that can be worked on, because have you ever heard the story of the, like, on the beach where there was a ton of starfish that came up, and the little boy went and would throw, like, one or two in, and, like, he tried to throw them all in, but he knew he couldn't get them all. And so the old man came out and he was like, "You can't make a difference, there's so many." And he was like, "I can make a difference for that one. If you make a tiny little difference, it'll help in the long run."
Yeah, especially if we all make a tiny little difference.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about a country as large in population as the United States, if we all did just one little thing, it would make a huge difference.
Yeah.
And it would be, and we don't have to be an example to the world, but many nations look to us to be an example because of our industrialization, because of our population, because of our contributions, and because so many people from other nations come here to, this seems to be their way of, it's like the dream, it's the dream to come to America and work and do whatever. But we have to be an example for the world. And how can we ask other nations to do something if we ourselves will not do it?
Yeah.
China produces more. They produce a lot of our products. China produces, and they're making a commitment to reduce their carbon footprint on the planet. And if China can do it, there's no reason why the United States can't do it.
Yeah.
And if the United States can do it, then the less fortunate nations that are trying to decide if they should do something are going to follow suit, and maybe we can help them by doing things like helping them with renewable energy like wind and solar.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's I think I am not a brilliant person. I am not a scientist. But I do think that there are little things that I could do that would make the world better. And I think that one of those things that I need to do is I need to get it out of my head that someday I want to get my old high school car back, the same make and model. There's no reason for me to have that. There's no reason for me to drive something like that when that thing, if I had it, it would burn it would get 12 miles to the gallon and just put a lot of carbon into the atmosphere. So I think I need to get rid of my regular car, and I need to save my money and get an electric car.
Those are cool. I think one of our teachers has an electric car.
Well, that's my goal. So that's my goal, even though they are super expensive. So if any listeners of Beaveman and the Daughter would like to donate a very nice Tesla, to the Beaveman, I would greatly appreciate it.
I would too. I really like Teslas. They're very cool.
Yes, we would both like a Tesla. We would just take one. We don't need two, but
We need two.
I will take a used Tesla. Actually, if someone would love to donate one to me, that would be great. Everybody, I would highly recommend you check out TED Talks, the podcast. They've got a really good one on cloud science. They've got a really good one on the 100 ways that we can help reduce global warming. I recommend everybody sees Leo. I love Leonardo DiCaprio. I recommend everybody watches the movie Before the Flood. I have recommended that to my daughter several times. She still hasn't seen it, so hopefully she'll watch it. It's very good. And I also recommend that everybody does everything in their power to get the current president out of office. And hopefully he does not get picked up by his party to run again. I'm starting to think that his own party is finally starting to see that he should not be there. And as a medical professional, and for my listeners who are going to listen to this and who love Trump and are going to be mad at me for saying this, as a doctor of nursing practice, as a nurse practitioner, if the president was my patient, I would be telling his staff and the president himself that, dude, you've got a psychological disorder. We need to get you, we need to have you see a psychiatrist, and I don't think you should be in office.
Oof.
Or you at least need to be medicated, and we need to see what your responses are because, buddy, you are off your flippin' rocker. So thank you to our listeners of Beaveman and the Doc and Beaveman and the Daughter. Next week, I will be podcasting remotely with the Doc. We will be making fun of stuff. I will be poking Doc with a stick as usual. And then the daughter and I will probably do another, what do we call it? What do I call it? Extra content. The Beaveman and the Daughter is a little extra content for our listeners. We'll probably do that at the end of March. So we've got until that time for the daughter to actually research a topic of what she wants to talk about, whether it's serious or not, and we won't tell you what it is. I like to wait for the episode to come out. So as always, well, actually I can't say as always because I usually say some sort of inappropriate expletive when I sign off from Beaveman and the Doc, and I can't do that with Beaveman and the Daughter. So until next time, Beavemanites, Docutrons, and what are you calling your people?
Bots.
Daughter bots. Yeah, it's kind of cool. Daughter bots. I will just say adios, muchachos. Oh, yeah, and if you don't like us, stop eating our food. Alrighty. Hey, what do you got to say, daughter?
Bye.